I tend to skip over some of the more intense details when it comes to how I actually got my ostomy. Generally just sharing that it was a failed intestinal resection and I wound up with the ostomy and emergency surgery. But there are a lot of details to this story that I want to share. It's therapeutic for me. It's also a way for me to continue to remember those details. And I know that so many of you guys can commiserate with thinking your life and your health is going to go in a certain direction, and it just goes the total opposite. So I want to share that with you today. Hey guys, it's Maggie and I am back today, and before we get into the story of how I got my ostomy, all of the gritty details, I want to thank today's sponsor, Ritual. I have been using Ritual for a few months now and it's undoubtedly become my favorite way to take my multivitamins. When you've got an unpredictable stomach, you take all the help you can get. Ritual's Essential for Women 18 Plus is my go-to, and my favorite feature about it is how easily digestible it is. I don't even need to eat before I take these, which I'm pretty sure that I've never actually had a multivitamin where I didn't have to eat, so, you know, there's that. They also have this refreshing mint scent that makes it feel like you're not even taking a supplement, which is amazing. They have a nice convenient subscription plan too that sends Ritual straight to your door, so if you're running low, there's no late night trips to the pharmacy to find out that what you're looking for is out of stock. Yes, that has happened to me more than once. Start a daily ritual that I know you will love just as much as I do, and Ritual is kindly offering my viewers 20% off their first month of subscribing. All you have to do is head to ritual.com/20letstalk to find your 20% off and check out all of the different items they have available. They have a whole array. This was just the one that interests me the most and I have been enjoying for a few months now. Thank you so much again to Ritual for sponsoring this video. It makes it easier and allows me to focus more time on making videos like this and just sharing my story, sharing my knowledge and experience with you guys. It's super helpful to my channel, so thank you so much. Okay, let's talk about how I got my ostomy, you know, the before, the during, and the after. If you are familiar with Crohn's disease at all, you may know that they can have all different types of patterns. Some people have a lot of inflammation and bleeding. Some people have fistulizing disease. Some people are prone to strictures. And I was one of those lovely people. I had strictures. And it actually took a while for us to figure this out, but once we did, we realized that I had 3 different intestinal strictures, and that just means I had narrowings of the intestines from all the Crohn's inflammation. And when you have these narrow spots in your intestines, it can make it really hard or completely impossible for food to pass through, meaning that you'll be severely constipated, you won't be able to eat, you'll be nauseated, and you might lose weight. Well, that was one of the things that was happening to me. I was very small and just could not grow. And this was at a time in my life when it was like the optimal time for me to be growing. The strictures really just ramped up when I was about 12 years old because it was really, when we discovered them and I was hospitalized, I was a freshman in high school. We did try to manage these strictures just, you know, with medications for Crohn's disease, but also with dilations. Of the 3 strictures, there was one that I could access from the outside. So I used to have to do rectal dilations because if I took a mirror down there, I could see the stricture. The other 2 strictures, however, were in my ileum and my colon. So eventually, when I was a junior in high school, my GI doctor said, okay, enough is enough. This has gone too far. Let's get you connected with a surgeon. Got connected with a surgeon and we planned on doing the resection, which just means they were gonna take out the strictures and a little bit more intestine and call it a day. The way that the strictures were placed and how your colon gets blood flow, they decided to just basically remove a portion of the ileum through a bit of the colon. They were just going to take out one full section that had 2 strictures in it and connect those pieces. So I would only have one connection in my body. At least this is what I have been led to believe. I was not there during the surgery. Thank goodness I was not conscious for it. I remember going to school, having to go to each of my teachers and telling them, hey, I'm going to be out for a little bit. I have to get surgery. And I remember them being like, well, how long do you think? And I was like, I don't know, a week? Yeah, it was a little bit longer than a week. So I remember that. I remember specifically telling my science teacher and him being like, oh, you know, this is your junior year. Like, you're going to have a lot you're going to miss. And yeah, I missed way more. I wound up having to do like after school schooling with all of my teachers. So yeah, it's just the way that it worked out. I also remember the night before going in for my resection surgery. Mind you, it was just supposed to be a resection surgery. I remember going in my dad's bedroom, just, you know, leaning in the doorway and saying, I think I'm going to wind up with an ostomy. And I wasn't even saying it as like, I think tomorrow I'm going to get an ostomy. I was saying it as, you know, I've seen other people that have had this, friends from camp, other people that I've met with Crohn's disease. And it almost sounds like a really nice break from all of these awful symptoms that I've been dealing with, because I was just managing this constipation. I was drinking so much prune juice, guys. I mean, that was my drink of choice, and so it's pretty miserable. The idea of an ostomy, I didn't like it. I didn't want one, but it almost sounded like, oh, a little break from, you know, having to sit in the bathroom for 5 hours after school. That sounds pretty cool. So I was told, though, by my surgeon, he's like, 1 in a million chance you'll wind up with an ostomy. Apparently I am 1 in a million. So we go in the next morning bright and early to get my resection surgery. I remember we were there so early. My dad tends to be like super duper early for everything, that they had not even opened the doors to the hospital yet. So we had to like bang on the doors. Security lets us in. We were the first people in the waiting room. And I can still remember, this was 2009, mind you. I still remember what the waiting room looks like. It was kind of a triangle shape, and I remember I was sitting in a way that I could see a couple of the doors that the nurses who were calling patients back were coming through. So I remember like looking at those doors and thinking, which one am I going to go back through? Which, you know, who's going to take me back? And I also remember these little boys that were there to get some kind of ear surgery. I think I may be totally off, but I think they were getting like a cochlear implant. So I just remember like looking at all the other kids, and I was one of the older ones in the room. I was 16 at this point, and I was nervous, but the way the surgery had been made out to me, it didn't seem too horrible. So, you know, did the thing. I don't remember being taken back to the surgery. I don't remember the beforehand. I do remember afterwards. So one of the things that happens to me, and that was one of the first times that it had happened, was I tend to wake up pretty early from anesthesia, or I wake up during it. I don't know what drugs it is that I'm on when it happens, but I wake up sometimes. So I remember from the surgery, I actually did wake up when I still had a breathing tube in. And as soon as they saw my eyes open and me, you know, wide-eyed looking at the surgeon or whoever the heck it was, they pulled that sucker out. They took it out right away. So I remember them pulling it out and then falling back asleep. And I was actually kind of surprised by the pain. I was not in as much pain as I thought I would be for having my stomach cut open. It was like a very intense workout. That's how I described it to people. And that's how I still feel. You know, I've had surgery in the last 3 years, and it just feels like so sore of muscles, just really tender. And, you know, recovery from that was actually going pretty good. I actually was doing really well. I still had the rectal stricture, a very severe one, and I don't think any of us really recognized how severe it was, but it was. I did well for probably 3 to 4 days after this surgery. I remember ordering chicken fajitas. I remember immediately noticing like, hey, it doesn't seem like my stomach hurts quite as much when I eat. I actually feel pretty good. I feel pretty good. And I was walking the halls, doing all the things. And slowly, very slowly, I started to have a new pain. This pain was different from surgical pain. It was different from Crohn's pain. It was sort of a burning. And it started off really small, but it grew and grew to where it felt like my whole abdominal cavity, like right under my ribs, all the way down, felt like somebody had lit a fire in there. And I'm thinking that my vitals must have been showing something happening, because every time a nurse came in my room to take my vitals, they would look at me and they would say, "Are you feeling okay?" And not in like a, "Oh, you feeling okay?" It was a, "Are you feeling all right?" And when I would lie, because I wanted to go home, I really just wanted to go home and get back to life, I kept saying, "Yeah, I'm like totally fine, everything's good." Status quo over here. I'm thinking that my blood pressure was going low and my heart rate was going high because I was in a lot of pain. And I eventually could not hide it anymore. And I think they did either a CT scan or something or other. And what had happened was that where my intestines had been connected to each other, sewn together, so I assume it was my terminal ileum, what was left of it, and some part of my colon. They were reconnected inside of me because I had a rectal stricture that was not allowing food to pass through. I was, again, getting constipated, and I was eating, and that food filled up, and broke the seam. And so I was leaking food, stool, all of it, into my abdominal cavity, causing peritonitis. So when this was discovered, I'll be honest with you, I was in so much pain that I only remember bits and pieces. But I remember being in so much pain, and when this is like a sign of peritonitis, if you are in nursing school or anything like that, is you get very rigid-like. You get very, you kind of get into a fetal position because it's kind of like the most comfortable you can get when you have this feeling. But I remember not laying in the bed, not doing any of that. I was sitting up in a chair kind of with my knees to my chest, just trying to breathe through the pain. They had already determined at this point, okay, we're getting you in for emergency surgery to see what we can do, to like clean you out and figure out what we need to do to keep you alive, basically is what they were gonna do. And it was morning time. I remember a nurse practitioner coming into my room and actually marking my belly for a stoma. I remember it happening. I don't remember a lot of the details of it, but I remember it happening. I remember sitting in the chair and being like, I just want to put my legs back up to my chest again, but they had to see my belly, obviously, to put the markings. And I also remember that to try and distract myself, I had completely picked my arms. I was like clawing at my arms. They actually thought I was having an allergic reaction, and I was like, no, this is how I'm coping until you guys can knock me the heck out and do this surgery. So I guess what had happened was there were so many surgeries booked that day, and they thought they had a little bit more time to work with. So that's why it was taking so long to get me down to the OR. I remember my dad trying to brush through my hair to make me more comfortable and distract me, but it was the longest wait. We probably called the nurse in every 30 minutes to ask her, when are they taking me to the OR. I had never wanted to be knocked out in my life so badly than I did in that moment. It was such a, it was a bizarre feeling because it's one thing to be in pain. Like when I got my proctocolectomy stitches out, that was really freaking painful. This pain was I don't know if I'm going to make it sort of pain. And all I wanted was to be knocked out. Like, I did not want to be aware of it anymore. Eventually, later in the day, we get the call that they can bring me down to the OR. So at some point in the time between them calling me to the OR and me getting down there was an accident. I was in a prominent children's hospital in Philadelphia. And so a lot of like big accidents around the area, all of that, they would go to this hospital for children. So some car accident happened where more than one child was severely injured and had to be taken into emergency surgery. So I got bumped. I remember they actually had me in an extra room. They didn't even have me in one of their regular pre-op rooms because I guess they just didn't have the space. So I was in a storage room because I remember there were hundreds and hundreds of those pink vomit buckets next to me. And I had actually been doing okay until this point when it comes to nausea. I was fine. But I remember I'm laying in the bed and suddenly the urge to throw up hits me. And it was quick. We didn't have much warning. And I said, Dad, get me one of those. I mean, so fortunately, I had a whole supply in front of me. So that worked out. And I started to throw up black. So you can picture in your mind what it was. It was a mixture of two fluids that should never be coming out of your mouth. It was horrible, and I still remember the taste. So if you ever wonder if people can actually throw up what's in their intestines, like far down in their intestines, they can. They can, and it's absolutely miserable. And that is the very last thing that I remember, because apparently I passed out, or they gave me some extra happy substances that knocked me out. And the next memory I have is about 3 days later. Apparently the surgery went well into the evening and my surgeon had to open me up. My original resection surgery was actually laparoscopic. So I only had these tiny little marks. You would have never known that I had surgery today if that was all I had. But he wound up doing the central midline scar, which is what you guys see today, my little canyon. He basically hosed me out. They decided to do an ileostomy. With the idea that we'll just give Maggie's colon and rectum time to rest. Maybe the stricture will heal, and if she, doesn't have food going through it, we'll give her 6 months to a year with an ostomy, and then we'll reconnect her. So my first memory really was waking up in the hospital. It was evening time. I remember it was dark, and a nurse was hovering over me, and I remember her pulling up my gown to look at my belly. And when she did that, I knew immediately. I already knew before I asked the question, but I was like, do I have an ostomy? And she goes, yeah, honey. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm peacing out. And I was out again. And then, I slowly started the road to recovery. I think I was in the hospital for 5 weeks, something around there. And I was very weak. I did also get a central line placed, which I still have. Let's see, where is it? There's like 2 little dots. Yeah, that's my central line scar. They placed that during the ostomy surgery. And that was to put me on TPN to help me heal and just have better access for me, because I'm sure they had me on antibiotics. I don't really remember, but I can only assume there were lots of antibiotics going into me also. Fortunately, during this period, we had actually met another IBD patient on the floor and her mom. And the night that I went downhill and had to get the ostomy placed, my dad actually was able to sit with the mom. The mom basically was just trying to console my dad because he wasn't sure I was going to make it out. And so they wound up being an awesome resource, because The girl also had IBD. She also had gone through ostomy surgery. She actually, I believe, wound up getting it reversed later on, but we were able to just like chat. They sent me a little gift basket because I wound up being hospitalized a little bit longer. And if you guys have ever seen in some of my older videos, I have this light blue sunflower that I put on one of the shelves that I used to have in my background when I used to film upstairs. And that was something they actually gave me. So that's why I keep it. They made such a big impact. I think more so for my dad than even me. Just to give him some support that there's another parent that's also going through this too. It's really funny though to look back at that time. You know, I really thought that I was just getting a resection surgery and I was gonna go on my way and be normal, you know? What you hope or think normal is. And then things just turn the other direction. I wind up getting this ostomy that just feels so impossible to care for. I remember, oh my gosh, during the first few bag changes, trying to remove the old ostomy bag, I went through probably 30 of those really oily adhesive remover wipes, which is why I'm always like, get ostomy specific adhesive remover. It's non-oily, so your bag will actually stick after you use them. But that's all they had. That's all they had in the hospital. So I went through so many of those stupid, tiny, orange scented squares trying to remove my ostomy because the whole area was just so sensitive. And now I look back and I'm like, I could rip off my bag and like not even flinch. But, you know, the whole area was just like cut open, so obviously it's kind of raw. And it would take me probably 45 minutes to an hour to remove this bag. I refused to let the nurses touch it. I was like, I'm going to remove it and I'm going to remove it in my own sweet time. And so those first few moments living like that, I was like, this is what the rest of my life looks like. I'm going to have an ostomy bag that leaks. My skin's going to be itchy forever, because we hadn't yet learned how to get a really good seal around the stoma. It's gonna take me forever to remove the bag. What am I gonna wear? I feel so sick and weak. I won't be able to go to school anymore. I'll have to be homeschooled. I won't be able to swim anymore. I won't be able to play soccer. I won't be able to do any of this stuff. And even though it took time, I think I'm able to do all of that stuff more so than if I had had a successful resection surgery. Because if that resection surgery had been successful, I still would have had the stricture. I'd probably still be drinking prune juice every day, copious amounts of it, and watching every single thing that I take a bite of and being worried about it. I'd probably still be having leaking from my bottom. What I thought was going to be so traumatic and life-ruining turned out to be so life-giving, which is why I share about it online. I think a lot of us have had that experience of just the things that we think are going to ruin our lives actually change them for the better. It's amazing. And I think if I could change anything, I'd probably ask them just to start with ostomy surgery and forget the whole peritonitis thing. But I'm glad it worked out this way. And obviously, I never did go back to get it reversed. I will have to, I think I'm going to share that in another video, because for the first few months, did not want that ostomy. I'll have to tell you more about it, but yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening to this story. I would love to hear your stories. Doesn't have to be ostomy related, but if something health-wise just, you know, you thought was just going to ruin your life and it actually wound up working out for the better, please share that below so not just myself, but also other patients can see it and hopefully get a little bit of encouragement. And thank you again to Ritual for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching it, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye, guys.